We continue now at the top of Daf Kuf Chaf Beis Amud Aleph in Mesechet Yevamos. This is Yevamos Daf 122a. The Gemara says Abaya waited Talasa Rigli. He waited 3 regalim, 3 holidays in order to answer this woman's question. Again, the question on the previous Amud was, she came to Abaya and she said that there was a certain non-Jew who said to a certain Jew, I'm going to kill you like I killed so-and-so. And so she happened to be the wife of so-and-so. And so she said, does this prove that my husband is dead and now I can remarry? And so he delayed in terms of answering the question. Rashi over here says, Talasa Rigli Shayu Talmidei Chacham Nikbotzim Lishmoa Drasha Hilchas Pesach BePesach V'Hoisa Shoelos Mayam. He was waiting for the regel when the Talmidei Chachamim would gather to hear the drasha. They would hear, let's say, Hilchas Pesach on Pesach, and he asked them this question. And Rashi continues over here, V'Tshuvas Hagaonim Matzasi Kol Hanech Rigli Damorai Hainu Yom Shemezbo Adam Gadol Kovim Oso Lichvodo. They would actually have a day when a certain great person died, let's say, so on the yard side of that time, they would establish it as a day for his honor. And each year when that day came, so all the Talmidei Chacham would come. They would come by his kever, and they would sit over there. And so that's another explanation of what Abaya was waiting for. But in any case, the Gemara continues, Amar Lo Ravada Barava. So Ravada Barava said to this woman, Zil Lakame de Rav Yosef. Go to Rav Yosef in terms of this question, to Charif Sakina, because he has a sharp knife. He'll be able to answer this question for you. So Azla Kameh, so she went in front of him and Pashat Meha. He answered from the following, Pashat Meha Masnisin, he answered from the following Brisa. It said as follows, Ovid Kochavim Shayam Mocher Peiros Bashuk. Let's say you have an idol worshiper who's selling fruits in the marketplace. V'yomer, and he says, Peiros Halalu Shal Orlahain. He says, these Peiros, they're Orla. Shal Azikohain, or they're Shal Aziko, they're from a particular place. Shal Neta Revoihain, or they're of Neta Revoy, they're 4th year fruits. Lo Amar Klum, that means nothing. We don't take what he's saying seriously. Lo Niskavin Ela Lahashbiach Mekcho. The person really only has in mind he's trying to up the value of that which he's selling, and so therefore we don't take his words seriously. Rashi over here says, Shal Orlahain Peiros Netiahain V'yeshna Meshubachim Mi Peiros Elon Zakein. His point is to say that these fruits are from a newer tree and therefore they're better fruits. And Rashi over here continues, Shel Azeka. So Rashi's first explanation is Mipardis Me'uzak V'geder Saviv Lo L'Shomro. It's talking about an orchard which is surrounded and protected with a fence. V'ishnas Shavias, and what he's essentially saying is it's coming from the Shemitah year, and that is the Isser. That's what the non-Jew is saying. V'kashali, but Rashi's bothered by this. Demai Isser Yeshkan. That's not an Isser on these fruits. Imavar Zman HaBiur Lo Shnamin HaMeshomer V'Lo Shnamin HaMufkar. If the Zman Biur pass, so it doesn't matter if it's protected or not protected. Asurim, it's going to be Asur. So what's the difference if there's a fence? Before the Zman beer, so it's always going to be mutter. But in any case, the Brisa says, Lo Amar Klum, this, the idol worshiper who says this, it's meaningless. Lo Ozram Al Kach, meaning his words, they don't answer, they don't prohibit these fruits. Eloholach Achar Harov, you have to just follow majority. Shazem Meshaker Ulashbiach Mechon Eskavin, this person is just lying in order to make it sound like he has better produce. V'chein Neta Revoy, even when he says 4th year fruits, Lahodia Shaperos Netiah, and again, it's to say it comes from like a young tree. We don't really take what he says seriously in terms of prohibiting the fruits. Rashi then offers another explanation. Azeka was actually a city in Eretz Yisrael. It had good fruits. Let's say he's living in Chutz La'aretz. He says, I brought them from Azeka in Eretz Yisrael. We don't say, oh, he's telling the truth. Maybe Meiser wasn't taken off properly. He's just saying it to make it sound good. Again, we don't take it seriously. Now, how is all of this approved? Here also, again, this idol worshiper was telling the Jew, I'm going to kill you like I killed so-and-so. He's just saying that in order to scare that person, but really, we don't really take it seriously, and we should not believe him, and therefore, essentially, Rav Yosef was paskening the woman could not remarry because she could not take the words of this non-Jew seriously and assume that her husband had died. And the Gemara continues, Abba Yudan ish Tzaidan, Abba Yudan of Tzaidan. Omar, he said as follows, Ma'isa b'Yisrael v'ovid kochavim. There was a story with a Jew and an idol worshiper. Shalchu b'derech, they were walking on the road. Uva ovid kochavim v'yamar, and the idol worshiper came and he said, Chavol al Yehudi shahaya imi b'derech. Woe is to the Jew that was with me on the road. Shemeis b'derech, he died on the road. Ukevartiv, and I buried him. V'isiu ishto, and based on that testimony of the non-Jew, they allowed his wife to remarry. V'shuv ma'is, and then there was another story. B'koler shel b'nei Adam, there was a group of people. Shayu mahalchin l'antuchya, they were walking to l'antuchya. Uvo v'kol chavim echad, and a certain idol worshiper came. V'yomer, and he said, Chaval al koler shel b'nei Adam, woe is to this group of people. Shemesu, that they died. Ukavartim, and I buried them. V'yisiu es neshoseim, and again they allowed their wives to remarry. V'shuv ma'isa b'shishim b'nei Adam, and there was also a story with 60 people. Shayu mahalchin l'charkom Beitar, that they were walking to the siege of Beitar. Uva ovid kochavim v'yamar, and an idol worshiper came and he said, Chaval al shishim b'nei Adam, woe is to these 60 people. Shayu mahalchin b'derech Beitar, that they were walking on this way to Beitar. Shemesu, and they died. Ukavartim, and we buried them. V'yisiu es neshoseim, and in these cases as well, they allowed their wives to remarry. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Mi'idin la'or haner, we are allowed to testify, let's say you see the body by the light of a candle, that is good enough to identify the body, ula'or halavan, or let's say the light of the moon, umasiyan al pi baskol, and we also allow a woman to remarry based on a baskol. Rashi says, what's a baskol? Shamu kol soekes, you just hear a voice saying, ploni mei, so-and-so died. V'lo ro adam etzalma, you don't actually see the person who's speaking, you just hear the voice, that's also good enough. Ma'isa be'echad, there was a story with one person, Shamar al rosh hahar, he was standing on the top of a mountain. V'yomer, and he said, Ish ploni ben ploni mimakam ploni mei, so and so from such and such a place died. Halchu v'lo matzu sham adam, they went to the area where they heard the voice, they didn't find anyone there. V'yisiu es ishto, yet they allowed his wife to remarry based on the voice that they heard. V'shuv ma'isa bet Salmon bechad shamar, there was also a story in Salmon with one person who said, Ani ish ploni ben ish ploni, I am so and so, son of so and so. Nashchani nachash, I've been bitten by a snake. V'harei ani meis, and I'm dying. V'halchu v'lo hikiru, when they went, they didn't recognize him, they weren't able to identify the body. V'halchu v'yisiu es ishto, but they did go and allow his wife to remarry. And the Gemara says, Amar Rava bar Shmuel says, Tana was taught, Beis Shammai omrim, Beis Shammai say, Ein masiyan al pi baskol. We don't allow somebody to remarry based again on this baskol. Beis Hillel omrim masiyan al pi baskol, but Beis Hillel say, we do allow someone to remarry based on the baskol. And the Gemara says, "My kamash molon." So what's the chiddush over here? Masnisani. Our Mishnah says exactly like Beis Hillel, that masiyan al pi baskol. And so the Gemara says, no, hakamash molon. What he's teaching us is as follows: the mashtacha stam de'ein masiyan. If you find a stam Mishnah somewhere that says that we don't allow the woman to remarry based on a baskol, Beis Shammai, then you can assume that that is following the opinion of Beis Shammai. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, "V'holchu v'lo matzu." Again, they heard this voice, but they didn't find anyone there. Gemara says, "V'dil mashed have it." Maybe it was a demon. How do you know you can trust it? Amar Rav Yudah Marav. Rav Yudah said in the name of Rav, "Sharo lo demus adam." They actually saw the form of a man. The Gemara says, "Inunami damu." So they look like the form of a man. So that's not a proof. So the Gemara says, "Dechazu le bavoa." They saw a shadow. Gemara says, "Vinunami islu bavoa." But don't demons also have shadows? And the Gemara continues, "Dechazu le bavoa de bavoa." They saw the shadow of the shadow. Gemara says, "V'dilma le'didu islahu bavoa de bavoa," but maybe the demons also have shadows of shadows. And to that, the Gemara says, "No." Amar Rabbi Chanina said, "Amar li Yonasan Sheida." Yonasan, the demon, said to me, "Bavoa islu," that they do have shadows. Bavoa de bavoa leslu, but they don't have the shadows of the shadows. And the Gemara continues, "V'dil matzara havoi," but maybe this voice came from a co-wife, and again, we can't trust a co-wife in such a situation. And so the Gemara answers, Tana Devei Rabbi Yishmael, it was taught in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yishmael, B'shas hasakon, in times of danger, kosvin v'nos, and we write and we give a get, afal pishein makir, and even though you don't recognize the person, Rashi over here explains, B'shas hasakona, at the time of sakona, she'adam mesukan, let's say a person is in danger of dying, kagon misha yamushlach babor, let's say you have a situation of a person who's in a pit, v'yamar, and he says, Kol shomea kolo yichtov get l'ishto, anybody who hears his voice, please write a get for his wife. Kosvin v'nos, and we listen to that, we write the get, we give it v'samchinan aleh b'chol devar, if we rely on it totally. She'omer anihu ploni ben ploni, we rely on that voice that he is so and so. V'hachanami, here also keshas hasakona damya, this voice that we're hearing to allow the woman to remarry is no different than a shas hasakona. Shem lo ta'amin lozel lo timtza acher v'teshav aguna. If you don't believe this person, if you don't trust this voice, then she's always going to be an aguna. This woman is never going to be able to remarry. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Akiva says, "Kishiradti leNahardoi la'aber Hashana." When I went down to Nahardoi to make a leap year, Matzasi Nechemi ish beis doli. I found Nechemi ish beis doli. Amar li, he said to me as follows: Shamati, I heard Shein Masiyan Esoisha be'Eretz Yisrael al pi Echad. I heard that they're not allowing women to remarry in Eretz Yisrael based on the testimony of one witness. Ela Yehuda ben Bava, the only person that allows it is Yehuda ben Bava. V'no meisi lo. So I said to him, Kein hadavarim. That's actually true. Only Yehuda ben Bava Bava and Eretz Yisrael allows this. So Amar Li, so then he said to me, Emor Lahem, tell them Mishmi in my name. Atem Yodim Shamadina Mishubeshas Begaisos. You know that there's troops all over the country. I can't come myself, but I have the following message from you. Mikublani mi Rabbi Gamliel Hazaken. I have a tradition from Rabbi Gamliel Hazaken Shemasiyan Aso Isha Al Piyei Echad, that you are allowed to allow a woman to remarry on the basis of the testimony of one witness. And when I came and I told this to Rabbi Gamliel, Samach Lidvar, he was happy with my words. And he said, we have found somebody else who agrees with Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. And from this event, Nizkar Rabbi Gamliel then he remembered Shenergu Harugim Betel Arza, that there were people that were killed in Tel Arza. V'heisi Rabbi Gamliel Neshosein Al Piyei Echad, and Rabbi Gamliel allowed their wives to get married on the basis of the testimony of one witness. V'hochzuku lios masiyan eid mipi eved mipi isha mipi shefcha, and they also allowed that they would allow women to remarry. Let's say you had one witness heard from another witness, in other words, hearsay testimony, or let's say you heard from a slave or a woman or from a maidservant. All of that was allowed. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yoshua, Omrim, Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Yoshua, they say, Ein masiyan aso isha al piyei echad. You're not allowed to allow a woman to remarry on the basis of the testimony of one witness. Rabbi Akiva Omer, lo al pi isha, v'lo al pi eved, v'lo al pi shifcha, v'lo al pi krovim. Rabbi Akiva says you can't allow a woman to remarry on the basis of testimony of a woman, of a slave, of a maidservant, or of relatives. And the Gemara says, V'sava Rabbi Akiva al pi isha lo. Does Rabbi Akiva really hold that you can't rely on the testimony of a woman in order to permit another woman to remarry? Vatanya, but we learned in a brayso. So Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer Mishum Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says in the name of Rabbi Akiva, Isha ne'emenes lahavi gita mikal v'chomer. A woman is believed to bring her own get from the following kal v'chomer. Uman noshim shamru chachamim einem monos lomar meis bala. If the women that the chachamim say are not believed to say that the woman's husband died, in other words, we listed a number of women who hate this particular woman, and therefore we don't trust them to say that her husband died. But even those women, ne'monos lahavi gitei, and they are believed to bring their get. We made a distinction that by the delivering of the get, the document itself serves as evidence. So Zushan and Menes Lomar Meis Bala, so the wife herself was believed to say that her husband died. Eino Din Shan Menes Lahavi Gita, shouldn't it be logical that she can bring her own get? And so now the Gemara makes the following inference. Noshim she'amru chachamim hu d'lo mehemni. It sounds like Rabbi Akiva saying there are specific women that the chachamim say are not believed. But isha b'alma mehemni. But in general, a woman is believed to testify that another woman's husband died. And so this seems to be a contradiction within Rabbi Akiva. And so the Gemara answers, Lokash, it's not difficult. Kan kodem shechzik, kan la'achar shechzik. It's very simple. There was a time period before they had this protocol of accepting the testimony of women. And at that time, Rabbi Akiva said that was a problem. But then they did establish a protocol that women are going to be trusted in this regard. And from that time forward, a woman was allowed to testify on behalf of another woman that that woman's husband died. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Amru lo, so they said to him, meaning they said back to Rabbi Akiva, Ma'isa b'vnei Levi, there was a story with some Leviim, Shahalchu l'Tzoar ir hatzmarim, and they went to the city of Tzoar, which was the city of the date palms, V'chol echad mehem, and one of them became sick, V'aviyu b'fundak, and so they had him stay in an inn. Now when they returned, Amru l'Fundakis, so they said to the woman who was the innkeeper, where's our friend? So no mislem, Mesukvartiv, she told them that he died and I buried him. And based on this testimony of the innkeeper, who was a woman, they allowed this man's wife to remarry. And so they argued to Rabbi Akiva, Velote kohenes kefundakis, certainly a kohenes, meaning if you have a woman who's a kohenes or just a regular Jewish woman, should be at least as believed as this innkeeper. So Amar Lahem, so he said back to them, Lekeshetei kefundakis nemenes. If a woman would have as much evidence as this innkeeper had, she would be believed. Hapundakis hotziol hamaklo v'sarmilo v'sefer Torah shabiyada. When the Pundakis said that this individual died, she didn't simply say that he died, she provided evidence. She took out his staff, his money bag, his sefer Torah, that all served as evidence, and that's why they were able to believe her in this situation. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Chof Beis Amud Beis.